So this is the Acer Predator Triton 17x, a very long name, but this is one of Acer's more high-end gaming laptops. It's a thin gaming laptop compared to their regular Predator or even their Nitro lineup. And look, this is not gonna come cheap. It's basically packed with like top of the line specs. This is an engineering sample, so I can't really show performance, but at least I can give you my overall first impressions and my thoughts. I do like the design. It's very, very clean. There's no crazy RGB going on here. It's just a simple CNC milled aluminum chassis. I think it looks really, really good. The Predator logo is at the top, but it's not RGB. The overall flex on top of the lid, there's a little bit, but it's not too bad, okay? It does pick up a lot of fingerprints. Like the more I press on this, you can just see my fingerprints forming all over the top of the lid. It's a 17-inch laptop and it weighs about 6.61 pounds. So even though it does look thin, it's a bit on the heavier side compared to other 17-inch laptops on the market. Plus, when you add the power brick into the mix, you're looking at another 2.3 pounds. This is a 330 watt power brick. Not as big as the 330 watt power brick on the MSI laptop I reviewed recently. It's not exactly a GAN charger, but it's definitely a lot smaller, so that's a good thing. Now, we do have a design that's been pretty standard for Acer for quite a while. You do have a lot of I/O with the left-hand side having, your power connector, you have your RJ45 port, 2.5 gigabit, then you have your USB-A port, Thunderbolt 4 port, combo audio jack, and then on the other side, you have another Thunderbolt 4 port, another USB 3.2 Gen A port, full-size SD card slot, and then of course you have your HDMI port, which is 2.1. Overall, the build quality feels good. Like you can easily open it up with one hand. The display does go all the way back. Like this is a display that can go 180 degrees. Like I don't know why you'd want to do this, but if you need to, you obviously can. Now the deck of the keyboard is very, very interesting because there's a lot of wasted space at the top. Like I understand these vents here allow some air to come in so that it could help keep the CPU and GPU cool, but I feel like there's just a lot of wasted space up here. And the only thing that you really see is a little button over here. Now this button, it used to, back in the day, just turn on turbo mode. So they've kind of changed that and it does more than that now. So instead of just turning on turbo mode, you can press it and cycle through different profiles. You can put it on balance, performance, silent, or of course turbo mode if you want the maximum performance. And of course it will change different colors depending on what profile you're on. Now this keyboard, it's a very, very shallow keyboard. There's not a lot of travel distance, but I don't know, it doesn't feel like a true gaming keyboard. It reminds me a lot of the Razer Blade keyboard. It's very similar in a lot of ways. Like it's very easy to get used to if you're typing on this for a very long time, but it doesn't have that like deepness that a proper gaming keyboard has. It's not bad, like you will get used to it pretty quick, but I would have loved a little bit more chunk to it. RGB looks fantastic. It's per key RGB. You can change it to whatever colors you want. And of course, it really, really pops on this black deck. I think it just looks really good. You have no numerical keypad, which I'm totally fine with. Macro key if you want to get to the Predator Sense menu. And you have a few tricks up its sleeve. Like if I directly go into it, I get this little cool graphic over here, which kind of gives me an update of what's happening with my GPU and of course the temperature of the CPU and the total system. Now, of course, right now, because it's not plugged in, all you see is eco mode and balance, but if you plug in the laptop, performance mode and turbo mode will pop up over here. And of course, you can go ahead and change it. Now, the touchpad is a bit on the smaller side, and obviously they had to do that because of the wasted space at the top in order to keep the laptop cool. But it is a glass touchpad. It feels fantastic to use. And as you can see over here, you have a little bit of a fingerprint scanner on the top left-hand side. Now, if you do place your finger over the fingerprint scanner, it doesn't get in the way. Like the mouse still moves, right? Which is a good thing because in some of the older versions of this, like you place your finger up here, it's kind of a dead spot. So that's not happening on this guy. Sticker placement, definitely on the crooked side, but I do like the little touch over here. This is RGB and you can control it using the software and put whatever color you want on it. Now, I know I mentioned that the entire chassis is made out of aluminum, but you do have a plastic bit over here for the hinge of the display. The actual display, there's a bit of wobble. It's not bad. Like, you open it up, it's gonna wobble back and forth for, a couple of seconds, but it's not a bad hinge. Like it's still very, very stiff. Like if you're typing on the keyboard, this display is not moving at all. But the star of the show is the display itself. Like this model I have here has a 17-inch, 16 by 10 QHD plus 250 hertz, which is not normal. Like most 200 hertz-ish displays usually get around 240. This is 250, so you get 10 hertz more. But it's a mini LED display. So you have a very bright panel. I'm talking 832 nits of brightness without HDR on, and I think that's incredible. I will say though that the color accuracy is great, but this mini LED display has not been tuned properly, and I'm finding this to be pretty consistent a lot with PC manufacturers. They're having a tough time calibrating these displays. What happens is there's just a lot of blooming. So for example, I was watching Interstellar, which is a great movie to watch in HDR if you want to see how these panels can function, and it was just blooming everywhere. Like I couldn't make out any of the details. It was just like white all over the place. Razer Blade, for example, it's fixed, thankfully, on the Razer Blade, but on the Razer Blade, if you had dark mode on and you were moving around the menu, you can see blooming around the cursor. That's gone now because they fixed it, but it looks like Acer's having issues as well. Now, granted, this is a pre-production unit, so by the time this goes to retail, it's probably going to be fixed. Most of the manufacturers are fixing it, but on this unit right now, there's a lot of blooming. Now, there happens to be 4 speakers on this. You have 2 on the front of the laptop, and then you have another 2 on the sides. And look, they're clean, they sound clear, but they lack any mid-range and they lack no bass whatsoever. Acer needs to start taking sound a bit more seriously because I haven't heard good speakers on an Acer laptop in a very, very long time. Now, the unit I have here is stacked. Like you're talking about an Intel i9-13900HX CPU. You have an RTX 4090 GPU that can run up to 175 watts. This unit has 64 gigabytes, tons of super fast NVMe SSD storage, and of course, that beautiful 17-inch display. It's not going to be a cheap laptop. I'm guessing anywhere from like $3,500 to $4,500 if you completely spec it out. But that's how every RTX 4090 is priced these days. They're very expensive computers, and obviously it's geared towards a very small niche market. Most people are not going to be running out to buy this thing because it is very, very expensive. Now, performance, I can't share at the moment. I'm not allowed to benchmark this, but it should perform very well compared to other laptops with an RTX 4090. If you've seen any of my reviews on those, then you should be able to get a general sense of how this performs overall. The only thing that's a bit different is the processor is a 13900HX, whereas its competitors are either using a 950 or a 980HX in a very similar thin chassis like this guy. Now, internally, it's very disappointing to upgrade. Like, you can upgrade this. The RAM is upgradable, the SSDs are upgradable, but the way you have to get to them is kind of frustrating. You have to flip the motherboard, turn it over in order to upgrade those components. Where in other laptops, it's pretty much right there in your face the moment you take off the backlit. It just makes the process a bit more tedious, and of course, it raises the chances of screwing something up. Now, you do have a pretty good cooling solution. It is a vapor chamber cooler, so that's good. You do have liquid metal on the CPU. The only thing that you can upgrade right off the bat without flipping the motherboard is the swappable Wi-Fi card. But there are 2 slots for SSDs, but again, it's on the other side of the motherboard. The battery's pretty big. You have a 99 watt-hour battery, but this is a gaming laptop with a very powerful, hungry HX processor. So I don't expect battery life to be that great. Maybe if you're lucky, 4 hours of regular productivity before needing to charge, but don't expect this thing to take you through the entire day. So here's how I feel. I think the design is great. It's simple, it's clean, it's thin, it feels premium, even though it's kind of heavy for a 17-inch thin notebook. It still feels very good to hold. Look, it's not perfect, I would have loved the ports to be at the backside, or completely on the back of the laptop to keep the cables away from you. I would have loved the motherboard not to be flipped to make your life easier if you want to add a second drive or upgrade the RAM. The display is not that much of a concern. Most manufacturers are fixing that blooming issue when it goes on sale, so I feel like that's going to be fixed here too. But I think it comes down to the price. Like if they're pricing this right next to the Blade 16 or Blade 18, they're going to have a tough time. If they can price it just below that by a few $100, I think this could be a very good option for a lot of people, assuming the performance is just as good as the others. So we'll have to see when I actually review this product where it stands compared to the rest of the competition out there. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.